We now are going to hear from Jody Gleeson about implementing a multicultural communication strategy to reach out to diverse audiences. So if we know, or if you're not doing it at the moment, we know certainly the census has shown us that as a much more multicultural community and country, it's something we need to be paying attention to. So Jody has over 20 years experience in marketing, events and community engagement in both the private and public sector. Her career commenced in marketing and events agencies in Sydney, London and Canberra with clients including Lexus, Porsche, Pfizer, Bacardi and Lion Nathan. That's a lovely mix of product. She's created and delivered many successful campaigns, events and product launches. Jody then transitioned to roles in community engagement where she led the creation of the ACT government's Mingle community development program as part of her role with the Suburban Land Agency. Welcome, Jody.
Yuma, welcome, and I would like to firstly acknowledge the land on which we're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people. I'm noticing a lot of people here from interstate. I'm seeing lots of puffer jackets. I'm a local Canberran, so I can definitely tell the interstaters in the room. So welcome, and welcome to those at home as well. Thank you for the great introduction. Currently I work in ACT government, been there for a number of years. In the last 2 years it's been an interesting space where I have been deployed into all of the emergency comms, and so I've got some examples today where I'm going to talk through some of the examples that we've had to face, certainly through bushfires and COVID-19, and how we've had to adapt to a multicultural audience. One thing that I'm just conscious of is that people are sometimes not aware of how the ACT government is structured. We have no local government in the ACT, so we combine our local and our state together. So we have the function of communicating all the policies and programs and also picking up your bin each week. So it's quite complex, and we are very hands-on, very on the ground. We have quite a small team, and we certainly are out on the street and listening to the people. I guess my passion is managing and working with diverse communities, so hopefully we can get through a few things today. I just wanted to follow on from the last presentation where we have Gary from HR. We have a Steve from Emergency Services, and Steve doesn't know how to spell. So if you follow the ACT ESA page, it's actually quite funny, and it's attracting a huge following where Steve jumps on and puts an emergency post up that has typos in it, has spelling mistakes, but all of the older demographic are following this one like you wouldn't believe. So it's quite funny. So if you wanted to listen, do that. 3 topics today: communicating with target audiences in different languages, employing evidence-based engagement techniques, and utilising digital and printed formats. I guess I just wanted to start with what is cultural diversity, and this is certainly no formal definition, but ultimately different backgrounds, different needs, different stories and different experiences. What we're learning more and more is that well, certainly in the work that I do, where it's a lot of grassroots work with local communities, is that all of our community members that are from different languages or different backgrounds actually want to be integrated into our community. So there are times and places where we need to adapt our communications, and there are times and places where they actually don't want that adapted. So what we know, we're very lucky to have just had the census results come out, and so I've got a few stats here which are worth running through. As at, well, yesterday when some of these stats were actually available in more detail, the top country of birth at the moment, and I've put ACT versus national, I know there's a mix of people in the room, and I've just highlighted 2 there which are just the main differences. And one thing to note, in the ACT, it's around 2% of the population which come from an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background. Probably the big difference there is in certainly the Nepalese and Philippines, which has shifted a little bit from a national level compared to the ACT, and we have a high Nepalese population here. Canberrans in the room, is anyone from Molonglo Valley? Has anyone been to Molonglo Valley? Excellent. So this is just a quick start, which is quite interesting. This is our newest region in the ACT. Since the last census, the population has gone up 50%, up to 11,500, but 41% of those people are actually born overseas. So incredible results. It's a brand new kind of a region of Canberra, but to show that difference has gone up so much. And I got some results last night that the local primary school there has just done their local update, and they have 75 different cultural backgrounds in the local school. So that's a huge shift from where it was 5 years ago in a brand new region of Canberra. Again, from the census, language spoken at home, so English only, and these are ACT and National are pretty much on par together, so I've rounded them up to be roughly the same. So English only is 71% and multilingual is 29%. There are actually 36 languages listed in the census of people that actually speak these regularly at home with their family. Fluency in English, and this is an interesting one because what they're saying here is that 83% of people actually speak English very well or well, and these are people that come from a different country or a different background. And not very well or not at all is 17%. Interesting enough, I did some market research last night with a group of culturally and linguistically diverse community on climate action, and it was fascinating that the results actually came out that the majority were able to speak English and did not want information translated as much as we had thought that they wanted to. So that came through, and I'm waiting on the formal report on that one, but just because the high level of English speaking within our bilingual communities is high. Languages. Again, I've just highlighted a couple there that are different between National and ACT. What's interesting in this space is that in 1991, the top 3 languages were Italian, Greek and Cantonese. Spanish was in the top 5 as well, so a huge shift in where those top languages are coming from, and Mandarin being the top nationally and also in the ACT. Enough of statistics, because I'm sure we do that every day in our jobs. A couple of things about language and content that I just wanted to run through, and obviously some tips. So what's really important is we understand the audience, we understand their needs, but most importantly, we're partnering with our stakeholders and community partners to actually understand what they want to communicate. I've put in there a reference to translations, but only if they're required and only if they're supported by the community members that you work with. I've put a couple of examples there of words that we have found very difficult to work with in the COVID-19 response. When COVID hit our doorstep, and in March 2020, we suddenly had to communicate words that were very unfamiliar, not only to our general English-speaking audience, but certainly into the culturally, linguistically diverse. Contact tracing, with the feedback that we would get, is that it would be, is that somebody in my phone book? Is that somebody that I need to meet on the street? Is that my sexual contact? Social distancing referred to, well, does that mean that I just don't see people? Or do I keep so far away that I can't speak to them? And quarantine related to border control. So we had to kind of shift these myths and really work with our community partners to translate this information into actually language that they understood. This part is just a couple of examples. One key learning from us in terms of climate action and also the COVID response was that we do have to focus a lot on illustrations, icons, animation, all those things that are actually visually appealing. We had some real challenges with photography, certainly in the COVID-19 space, where there was no access to people, obviously, when everyone was at home, but we couldn't actually get imagery that actually captured people with masks or anything like that we were able to put into our communications. So we did actually have to rely on illustrations, but choosing the right illustrations was very difficult. So we worked with our community partners, literally in the size, shape, colour, dress, everything that those illustrations were made of. The bottom right-hand corner there is an example of our Easy English, and we've worked really hard in the last 12 months to try and put as much of our key communications into an Easy English format. If anyone's ever tried to write Easy English, it's actually much harder than probably just writing for mainstream media. So really taking that step back and simplifying it and translating. We had quite a large outbreak in the ACT in our public housing complexes as well. And we had to make sure that every piece of that communication was put into an easy English format because we had the evidence from our community partners that literacy levels were quite low. So making sure that the visuals were right, making sure that they were culturally appropriate, and really simplifying that was critical. The other thing that we've focused on, and we are getting great results in the ACT, is the use of QR codes. I think collectively we haven't had a choice other than to use QR codes with checking in, and wherever we go we feel like we're QR coding. But that is a way that we have been able to also work with our multicultural audiences because everybody understands the universal QR code. A couple of things that we've had to do with COVID-19, we've translated all of our materials into 20 languages. We translated our social media content, and we also worked with the stakeholders. We also did some in-language paid advertising, which wasn't as successful as what we'd hoped, but it basically targeted those people who had chosen a different language on their Facebook page and tried to follow them so we could get those messages to them. It wasn't very cost effective and probably wasn't as well targeted, again, because I think they wanted to be following the mainstream media, is the feedback that we received. We also provided in-language scripts to our local community radio stations so they could actually speak in language to the local community. We had vaccine local community champions who represented the majority of the cultural backgrounds in Canberra that we would meet with regularly. And we also had face-to-face presentations. But we also had a community partners network and still have that in place. And so that includes a whole range of different sectors, all different cultural backgrounds, but also disability and the aged and a whole range of people that we can connect to at any stage whenever we need to. So if we have a new campaign, we can send them those concepts of a campaign and we get that immediate feedback from our network. A couple of the challenges that we certainly have faced, it's been very difficult to benchmark and to provide the stats on how well some of that cultural engagement or communications has been working. So we're kind of really trying to get into, and following the last presentation around the analytics and how we can get that data source much more effectively because they tend to engage with their local community representatives. A couple of examples here where we actually translated materials and put them out for specific celebrations or purposes, and these were really well received, and we found that these people then copied them, shared them, but it also looked like it was legitimate and coming from the government. So we would, everything from Chinese New Year to Ramadan, Eid, even to very other religious, Greek Orthodox, all of those things we would have promotions around. Probably the best, the success that we've had in the ACT is we had to make sure that we were keeping everything fun. Huge engagement from our multicultural audience. I love the fact that we've got a wombat theme going on today. But we had to do things that people, regardless of what their background was, they actually recognised. So the Arnold Schwarzenegger post there went gangbusters. It was put at the right time, at the right stage, and was shared hugely. And we would then tap into different themes. We did one for when the Bachelor season came out, and it was showing the distance between how many roses you should have between you and your partner, and just trying to really tap into that theme or that trend at the moment. And we found that that really worked. We were very lucky here in the ACT that we had an executive team that were very open, a chief minister that was very open to kind of breaking the rules as much as we wanted, and we were very free to take as many risks as we liked within reason. One important thing that we've worked through is it has been very important to provide the tools to our community partners. So if we created something in English, certainly for social media, we would create it sometimes in it will basically create a template to give to our community partners, so then they could translate that and then put it out to their networks. This was really well received, and we did this for everything between masks, vaccines, and we're still doing it now for the flu and a few other things. So what they had asked for was that it had the trusted branding of government, but enough ability for them to tailor it themselves and make it something that they owned. Printed materials and translations are sometimes a bit of a given, but they're becoming less popular, I guess. But the feedback that we are receiving in the ACT is that a lot of our multicultural audiences do prefer the printed materials. We also have a newsletter that goes out to every household in the ACT once a month, and that is a hard copy newsletter. Every time we've talked about even taking that away or making it only digital, the feedback we get is not good. So I think at times people still want that tangible thing that they can share with their communities, particularly as we resort back to more events and face-to-face activities. People do want to receive some things within reason. Community connections. I know I've mentioned a few times about our partners. But the thing that we have worked with is that a lot of our multicultural community down here love to almost be a little celebrity. So they love to be the person that's been connected with the government and to be able to tell their family or their connections. So we've really utilised that and worked with some great community champions to create some great material. Now, hopefully, the next one that I'm going to show you is we partnered with our Sudanese community. We had some mini outbreaks in some of our Sudanese community, COVID-19 outbreaks in the Sudanese community, and who did not really speak a lot of English, but they were so fearful of the government, so fearful of anybody that might have come to their door. They only trusted their own doctors. So we had to really work with the couple of community champions and try and build up that trust of the government, but also try and reach out to their community. So if we had people going out on an outreach for them to get tested, because they thought testing was the worst thing that could actually happen, we would make sure that there was a community leader alongside that. So this is just a quick example where we partnered with 2 of the Sudanese community leaders to create something for that community. It was then taken out on iPads to people's homes, or within there, a lot of them live together in huge communal homes and still do. So we would make sure that we would take iPads and actually show them this video.
We chaka moderate ran jamatene and Mariala Court Bandon South Sudanese community in the ACT. Through this video, we are trying to explain what is happening together with the ACT Health.
As you know, there are people in the ACT at the moment who have COVID-19. COVID-19 is an illness that spreads really easily from person to person. So to try and stop the spread, the ACT government has put in place a lockdown.
What is quarantine? Can you please explain to me what quarantine involves?
So being in quarantine means that you need to stay at home. So you're still going to need to get food. So the best way to do this is to get it delivered contactless to your door. You can ask family or friends to bring it over, but you can't have any contact with anybody while you're in quarantine. If you have a medical emergency, you can call 000, but you need to let them know that you're in quarantine.
Get COVID-19 test when you have symptoms of COVID-19, such as fever, sore throat, cough, loss of smell, loss of taste, or shortness of breath. Find out where to get free test from ACT COVID-19 website or call ACT COVID-19 helpline. ACT Health will assist you if you have COVID-19. In which I can let kubag nyin ti rot. In a ding der kor bag ping, ka kar bag der bag ngi. Kikin wautana, Kian we yokan, or Mariara Court, Karan der to community.
We chaka leja red koikwa ni pinkia weping ni emesin dan COVID-19. Twanya chiban buke twanya leja red kwa lui wotin wodie ko we koike community don, koike ACT Health, kujala koike ACT government ning police sector. Na tinga ke ban wale ke jam kana we ya kariho. Kuluai ke tokwane ke chambe twanya betiam so kene ne ke le balawe ko we community da we chakale jaret again nyali kana wek shukran.
So those two community leaders were so proud. I sat there with them doing this video. That was obviously a shorter, condensed version. It went for about 3 or 4 minutes. And they were so proud to share that with the community that they would literally go door to door to show their family and their friends. So the interesting thing with that is that their preference, so that would not normally be our brand or our certainly keeping in line with the brand. They asked that the backgrounds were plain. They asked that the words were simple. They asked that the doctor was just wearing something culturally appropriate, but she was wearing a floral, like a flower shirt. They were very descriptive around all of that, and I think that helped it being so well received in the community. So little tips like that we may not have picked up. We probably would have had a big banner in the background and done all those fancy things that we do, but their approach was don't do that. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artwork is something that we certainly really focus on here in the ACT government. For the COVID-19 response and vaccines, we commissioned some artwork from a local young artist, and it's been critically important for us to spread the word to the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. She created this artwork and we gave her a brief of all the bits around safety and protection and community, and this piece of artwork she built and then created her own story. So she then produced a video for us, and it talked about the importance of family and community and what we needed to do to wrap around each other to give that support. So that is now on every piece of Aboriginal artwork, but because she tells that story, it's getting a lot more coverage and also a lot more respect, I guess, from the government. I've just got one more short video, and this is another one where in a couple of our newer suburbs in Canberra, we've had some issues with crime, where you have a number of houses that are mid-build, and people come in and they're stealing the things as they're being built. I'm sure it happens everywhere around the place. But because a lot of our new communities here in Canberra do come from a different cultural background, we were finding it difficult to communicate to them how to report crime. And so they, maybe back in their home country, they would just tell somebody or they'd tell the local police. But trying to tell them that there was multiple numbers, trying to tell them that there was 000 versus your local police station versus Crime Stoppers was almost impossible. It's impossible for most of us, to be honest. So this is just another example where we partnered with Auslan, so the lady there on the right, who's one of our main local people. And we also partnered with a lot of these local community members across Canberra who wanted to put the message out in their own language.
See it, report it, sort it. Keep your community safe, report crime.
देखो, रिपोर्ट करो और हल करो. अपराध को रिपोर्ट करें और अपने समुदाय को सुरक्षित रखें.
பார்க்கவும் புகார் செய்யவும் சரி செய்யவும் நம் சமூகத்தை பாதுகாப்பாக வைத்திருப்போம். தவறு செய்பவரை பார்த்தால் புகார் அளிக்கவும்.
Etwas sehen, anzeigen und helfen. Für eine sichere Nachbarschaft melde Straftaten.
দেখুন, জানান এবং সমাধান করুন. Together দেখুন, জানান, সমাধান করুন. কিছু দেখলে জানান, আপনার সমাজকে নিরাপদ রাখতে জানান.
Увидеть, доложи, реши. Береги общественный порядок, докладывая о нарушениях.
பார்த்திடுவீர், பதித்திடுவீர், பகுத்திடுவீர். ஆம், நம்முடைய சமுதாயத்தை பாதுகாத்திடுவீர். குற்றமதை வெளிக்கொணர்ந்துவீர், குற்றமதை வெளிப்படுத்துவீர், நல்வழிப்படுத்திட.
Lo ves, lo reportas, lo solucionas. Mantén tu comunidad segura, reporta el crimen.
देखिए, सूचना दीजिए, समाधान कीजिए. अपने समुदाय को सुरक्षित रखें, अपराधों की सूचना दें.
हेर्नुहोस्, रिपोर्ट गर्नुहोस्, समाधान गर्नुहोस्. तपाईको समुदायलाई सुरक्षित राख्नुहोस्, अपराध रिपोर्ट गर्नुहोस्.
Police are here to help. In the event of a life-threatening emergency, you can call 000 from a safe location. The operator will ask if you require police, fire.
So I won't go on, but that's a bit of an example. So what we did then was cut that down into localised little videos or little 10-second versions. So when you get those comments, certainly on Facebook, that say, I've had a break-in, I need to report it, we'd be able to respond very quickly with a quick video that actually told them in their language. We also provided this to our local community partners who then shared that amongst their local networks, so at least we had a response for where to go when people did report, certainly report crime. Just a few things here around being mindful of our differences, and these are things that I guess, there's no strict guideline around this, but these are things that I certainly work with my team on. And a lot of things that I've learnt in the multicultural space, and probably right from the beginning, which is those first three, is gender, religion and the status in the community. So I had to learn very quickly, quite a few years ago, that as a female, as a blonde female, and someone that was younger than some elders in the community, that I really had to learn where I sat when I was talking to people or communicating with people. I think that's really important. It's certainly the things that I teach the younger staff that are in my teams around that level of respect. So we do a lot of work with our local Aboriginal communities and certainly within some of our Indian communities, and we get told very quickly around the status and the level. So that's just something really important to take notice of. Body language and eye contact, again, just really important factors when you're talking to people or engaging or even doing a video like we did with the doctor. Clothing, sometimes, our younger generation are shocked when I say that we have to wear things that cover our shoulders. But if we put something out to one of our communities who finds that offensive, they're immediately going to shut us down or criticise us publicly on social media. We need to create a safe space. A lot of the community information and the partnerships that we have, we actually create a middle ground of where we can actually meet, or we go to them. We often get invited locally into people's houses down here to meet because they feel it's safe. So trying to work through the logistics and the risk management of that with senior executive and HR is sometimes challenging, but if we don't get the right outcome. So it is that balance. We need to listen more and we need to share the stories of the people in our communities. I've just got a little tool here which is something that we use, and I know this is focused a little bit more on engagement rather than comms, but I feel like the stakeholder engagement then brings the comms. This is head, hands, heart. So a lot of the work that we do is actually talking to our community members, certainly people from different cultural backgrounds, but actually getting them to talk about things that are important to them. By that point, we then break the ice, we then try and understand them, and then we get a lot more out of that conversation and the ability for them to trust us, and also for them to share the information that's really important. So thinking about the head, which is basically things you know. So they will tell us what they know and things that we shouldn't do. Hands is really important. A lot of the work that we do, we actually create an activity which is part of the engagement, whether it's building something or making something that's important to them. And heart is things that they care about. So often when we start one of our engagement sessions, we will always bring these head, hands, heart into a room and really understand our audience before we try and work with them. Some top tips to take away. Again, know your audience, utilise the audience as much as you can. They are literally our partners in everything that we do in communications in ACT government. We need to allow time. As many of you would know, working with local community groups or certainly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, we always get told that we don't give enough time. So we are really, we're setting guidelines and practices in place now, which is actually extending our timeframes quite significantly when we're talking about communicating or wanting responses from our different audiences. We need to accept change. It will happen. We also need to keep targets realistic. You can aim high, but realistically, we need to make things that are actually going to be achievable. Keep it simple, be authentic, adapt the creative. An example is that Sudanese video, but a lot of the materials that we are creating for our multicultural families and our community are not the most beautiful pieces of work, and you need to take that pressure off yourself to go, well, it's not completely on brand, because at the point they don't care. They just want to make sure that that message is clear and simple and probably has the right logo so it's a trusted message. But other than that, if they need to rework some of that to make it into their own space, we need to accept that. And given that I knew that I was probably very close to being the presenter close to lunchtime, food is the big tip of the day. So if you are ever going to engage with a multicultural group of people or stakeholders, bring food or encourage them to bring food. A lot of the work we do, they want to share, they want to give back. So the minute we say, well, let's make it a dessert morning tea, suddenly we have tables of food, as you can imagine. They want to share, they build that trust, and then we often bake and bring our own food and share. The amount of barriers that has broken down has been phenomenal. And the one on the left there is actually an engagement activity, which actually just started with a bit of a feast, and that was all their own food that they brought. The engagement, the results out of that were incredible. Not only in the multicultural, but different ages of multicultural as well. And the other one there is our Mingle Community Development Program, which is in all of our new suburbs, but we often offer fruit for the kids. So some of these families don't have a lot of money, don't sometimes go to these events to really connect with the community. So by offering free food, which at the end of that 2-hour event, that whole table had gone plus another equivalent of it for about 100 people. So yes, there's the people that take freebies, but there was honestly just people taking that to take it home to their family and have food for the evening. Now, this is a quick plug for anyone who's in the ACT. I'm not going to go through the details, but we have an engagement open at the moment, which is actually the new Multicultural Recognition Act. It's a big thing for the ACT, but it's about working through the legislation on how we can improve the way we work with the multicultural community. So if anyone's interested, QR code there. The only other plug that I will say, because I feel like I'm in a very targeted audience here, if anybody wants to join the ACT government, we've got a couple of positions. We're a great team, and we love what we do and we love keeping it local. I'll just finish with one little quote that I have up on my wall at home or in the office, wherever we might be these days. One of the things we need to learn is that every great change starts from very small conversations held among people who care. So have a think about that when you're next working on something with a new audience. Start little, grow big, and you'll find that the communication happens for itself. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jody. It's quite funny that you mentioned that some multicultural communities want to still be part of the English conversation, if you like, as opposed to own. My background is Macedonian, and my grandmother came to Australia, and every time when I was growing up, she'd pick up the phone and say, "No, speak English," and that's the way she'd say it. But I'd come home from school and she could tell me everything that happened on Days of Our Lives, everything to a T. Yep. So I think it's that choice that you're giving them, which is sort of, I think, what you articulated as well. Yeah. Any questions from the audience to start with? Oh, great, over there.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to ask around the community spokespeople, what privacy measures in terms of their safety and their health and well-being are you putting in place?
So we have a few things. We go out to the main community leader within a certain group. So the Sudanese, those were 2 equal community leaders. We actually, in some instances, they come to us because they want to put the message out. Often we find that there is protection in place a little bit from what they choose as well, like they will tell us. That particular video for the Sudanese was not put on social media. For that reason. So that was literally taken home to home on an iPad. So little things like that where we do measure what the protection might be. For the reporting crime, and we've done quite a series of different ones in that style, these are actually community people that volunteer. So they recognise, we make it very transparent. We have a form that they have to fill out around where it's going to be promoted and played. If one of them is not comfortable with something being on social media, then we adapt the piece of communication and shift it. Often we find that, there is a couple of community leaders that are in Molonglo Valley and they want to be in every video because they genuinely think that they are a celebrity. And then they share it overseas with their families and then they rave about it and then it's tagged and shared. But we do what we can. I guess if something, we've been lucky that nothing's happened, but if it did, we've got the ability to shut that down pretty quickly. But they do have to sign permission forms as well that says what's happening.
Mary, there was a question over there. Sorry, Lindsay.
Thanks, Jody, for your presentation. Really interesting examples there. I was wondering, you've clearly got a very supportive government backing all you do, and you're clearly having some great feedback and results. I wonder, though, if you examples of how you're proving to your superiors, supportive as they are, with data about the results you have, because it can be a really hard place to get
Yes.
clear survey results or something on.
Absolutely.
Have you got any examples of that and tips for the rest of us to prove your impact?
So during the COVID-19 response, so about 6 weeks after that started, prior to that, probably not a lot, to be fair. You have your ad hoc conversations with different community leaders, but we were having I think it was once a quarter meeting prior to COVID that was with all of our community leaders, and they would provide feedback in that conversation and then we'd report that up to government. COVID-19, we started a monthly conversation with these groups, and that information, and sometimes the ministers would actually attend that conversation and listen in, and we would then obviously report all of that and then give that back. We did have the stats, that the data that you can get off social and who's engaging and off and Google Analytics and all of those things, but I guess it wasn't showing some of the behaviour change, so we really had to work with those partners. Look, I think the beauty about government is if we're not doing it well, we know pretty clearly because they'll send a message to our Chief Minister pretty quickly and it comes the reverse way. We didn't get a lot of that, thankfully, but we do in other forms of communication. I think probably the biggest criticism is in some of our engagement projects, where it might be on a certain topic and they'll say, well, how have you engaged with X audience? So yes, you can get submissions and you can get information. What we're finding is that people don't want to disclose sometimes what background they're from. So we're trying to work at the moment on some of our data sets as well. So it's, yes, I'm Australian, but I speak X, Y, Z, whereas sometimes we try and condense that because we don't know that we need the data. But yes, you are right, we do have a very open-minded government and senior team who were willing and still are willing and open for us to do things a little bit differently. But we've also got the luxury of our geographical space where I can be at one end of Canberra to the other in 40 minutes and literally be able to have cups of tea with people. So not so easy in any other jurisdiction, but that obviously has helped. But I guess that's the role, that's why I kind of gave that context at the beginning, because we are local and state government. So it's relying on your own government partners to feed that connection as well and that feedback through. But yes, it's something that, it's a challenge, I think, updating where we're at. But we certainly know about it if we're not doing it right.